Good morning and welcome to the monthly Planet Doug Patreon Ask Me Anything video for February 2025. Today is March 1st, 2025, so the month of February just ended. So I'm going to answer all of the questions that people asked me during the month of February. Ask me anything, as they say. And I have a list here on my phone, so I have to leave my reading glasses on throughout in order to be able to refer to these. So I'm hoping to go through them a little bit quicker than I have in my last AMA video. I'm a little bit of a long-winded person. When you put a camera in front of me, it appears. But in this case, I think people just want answers to the questions. They don't need an hour-long essay to go along with it. So I'm going to try. But I've got my instant cup of coffee to keep me going. And let's dive into the questions. Side Trip Life, a very good YouTube vlogger in Thailand, by the way. Check out the Side Trip Life channel. Side Trip Life, he asks, when or if it comes time to slow down from traveling, would you consider morphing into a YouTuber content reviewer channel? You do a really great job of that with keen observations and interesting analysis. Well, thank you very much for the embedded compliment there. So I think what he's referring to is that on my Planet Doug Behind the Scenes channel, I do a kind of video journal or podcast. And one of the sections I developed over time was like a YouTube vlogger stories, because I watch a lot of YouTube videos, particularly from travel vloggers. And then if I have thoughts about them in my podcast, I talk about them and I say, oh, I just watched the latest video from Itchy Boots, and I talk about the video and thoughts I have about what she did in the video, and of course how she filmed it, how she packaged it for YouTube, that kind of thing. And I often come across brand new YouTube vloggers that I've never heard of before. There are more and more of them all the time, and they show up on my in my YouTube feed. So then I review not only the video that I watched from them, but I need to learn about them in general. So I'll go to their YouTube channel and look at the entire channel. You can take the videos and put them in reverse order. So you see the very first video that they posted. Could have been 10 years ago, could have been last year, could have been 6 years ago. And I go through their entire YouTube channel and just look at all the videos they made, and I just sort of learn about their history as a YouTuber, as a traveler, everything that they've done. So that's kind of what he's referring to. And well, yeah, I mean, I would love if those sorts of thoughts, that kind of video turned out to be really popular. Well, I would create an entire channel dedicated only to that. If I thought it would be popular and people would be interested, I could have the Planet Doug YouTube vlogger channel where I do nothing but that. Of course I would do that. I think about a lot of different things, and I consume a lot of content on YouTube, podcasts, movies, TV shows, and yeah, if there were enough hours in the day, I could create a separate YouTube channel about every one of those topics. But I don't know whether I would be very good at it, because, to be honest, when I started doing these YouTube video reviews, it was more from a perspective of, I see all these things and nobody else ever seems to see them. And they're usually somewhat negative things, I have to admit. Like, you know, I'm a YouTuber and I'm making YouTube videos and I pour myself heart and soul into a video, and pretty much nobody watches it except for the few people out there that are more dedicated followers of Planet Doug. But then I'll see a video from some random YouTuber that, from my point of view, the video itself is just cheap and it's got no content and it's just weird. I see all these things in the video, and then I go to the comments and I'm looking for people to call them out on these things. But nobody ever does. So I ended up with this sort of weird reaction where in one of my videos, like it even happened recently with my Bukit Dinding hiking video, which It was a lot of fun to make. I really enjoyed the experience. I enjoyed making the video. It's one of my favorite videos that I've done for a long time. And from my point of view, there's a lot of content in the video, a lot of topics, a lot of subjects, a lot of perspectives, a lot of ideas, a lot of other people. But I'm pretty sure that, you know, people who leave comments on my video, let's say I got a haircut. So people will comment on my haircut. And I'm like, but what about everything that's in the video? Isn't there something there of interest? But it'll be some random small thing. I'm basically saying that anything that I might do wrong, get incorrect, or do poorly, people in general are very happy to point it out to me, which I don't mind at all. You get better with feedback. So that just happens to me all the time. And then I'll see this video on YouTube that seems to have like a dozen horrible things wrong with it, but nobody ever says anything in the comments. Like, nobody ever points it out. I go through all the comments and it's nothing but unbelievable praise. Like, wow, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. The best video of all time. You are an incredible person. On and on and on. Nothing but compliments and praise. And I'm scratching my head going like, what am I missing? Like, why is it I see this video in a completely different way from these hundreds of people leaving these complimentary comments? So, to be honest, it was sort of from that kind of negative point of view where I started talking about YouTube videos, because I see all these things, nobody's commenting on them. So when I'm recording my journal, or if I were writing in my journal to a friend or something, I would be writing about these things and pointing these things out about the video. I have all this built up inside me and I just kind of have to let it out. So I just started talking on YouTube, on my behind the scenes channel, talking about all these other YouTubers and the videos they make, and basically my thoughts about their channel. And that led to, you know, a lot of pet peeves of mine. Some of them are pretty obvious, I think, pretty standard. Anybody that scans the videos of people coming to Kuala Lumpur for the first time, their videos are all very, very similar, and they have titles like, I was shocked, I was amazed, I couldn't believe it, I didn't expect this. It's almost like a cliche now that all those videos have the same title. And I'm assuming all these people saw other YouTube videos that were popular, saw their titles and just thought, well, that video title worked, that thumbnail worked, I will just repeat that. And again, that gets me into clickbait. I have a real pet peeve about clickbait thumbnails and titles and the big name, the words they put on the thumbnail, all of which is generally either complete lies or totally inaccurate or really, really misleading. And then I go to the comments expecting someone to call them out on this behavior, but nobody ever does. So it's like nobody really cares that the whole thumbnail and title was just 100% clickbait and essentially a complete lie, that whatever they said happened in the video title, you watch the video, none of that actually took place. But it sounds good and it sounds exciting and it sounds dramatic, so they put that in the video title so people click on it. So I see this kind of cynicism, and then I want to call people out on it. So that's kind of how I started going down the road of talking about YouTube videos and travel vloggers and things like that. But of course I do talk about things that I really, really like, YouTube vloggers that I really admire and I like what they're doing. But that's pretty rare, to be honest. I think video of traveling is really hard to do and hard to do well, at least from my point of view. So even travel vloggers that I kind of tolerate, I still don't really like them. And again, I think it's because of the medium that video takes so long to make, and it is so limited in what it can show that people make choices, and my version of what their trip is all about doesn't really come across in the video, if you see what I mean. If I talk to them in person, oh, tell me the story of when you went to Kuala Lumpur, I think they would tell me a much different version in person compared to the video they made. And that's the story I'm interested in. I want the whole story from a personal level, the reality of what actually happened, not the glamorous facade that you create to put into a video. So, but yeah, I guess I went off on that tangent because there aren't a lot of travel vloggers that I truly enjoy and look forward to their next video, things like that. I tend to watch a lot of these videos with a critical eye. I'm thinking of them as a YouTuber. I'm looking at them going, oh, so what was your actual experience like? And then I look at the video and see whether the video actually matches what I see in the experience. And then I'm curious about I'm curious about how they filmed, what cameras they used, what microphones they used. I'm curious about all their gear, their shooting technique, their editing technique, and I'm interested in how people respond to them in the comments, things like that. So I certainly have a passion for it. So going back to his question, could I see myself doing that full time? Like, rather than if I stopped traveling, then could I be a travel content reviewer? Well, yeah, absolutely. But I could say the same thing about everything. I could easily have a channel only about movie reviews or television show reviews, things like that, podcast reviews, because I consume a lot of content. So yeah, I could see myself doing something like that, but I don't think it would be very popular because my perspective seems to be very different from a general audience's perspective. We don't see things in the same way. So I think I would be talking to a very small audience of people who might relate to what I'm saying, but the average person probably wouldn't. But who knows? In the future, maybe someday. Dominik Schwind asks, okay, this might be an interesting topic. You've talked a lot about how you dislike vlogging cameras being photo first with a video add-on. Did you ever consider using a video first camcorder? And that's a really good question. I like that a lot because as he points out, I do have a really big problem with this. I talked about it a lot, that cameras in general are all designed from the ground up to take pictures. And the photography cameras have been developed for, I don't know, a century or more, and they've been refined and refined and refined. Everything from the electronics to the film and now digital, and then the buttons and the shape of the camera, the grip, everything about every camera you might see in a camera store is designed for you to pick it up, hold it like this, and take a picture. And then video became popular, and rather than the camera companies creating a video camera, all they did was take the picture-taking camera and stick in a video feature. So you even look at the buttons. The newest camera drives me crazy from that point of view, the Canon PowerShot V1, which is the brand new vlogging camera from Canon, which I'm actually very excited about. It seems to be the very first actual vlogging camera that has some potential. But I don't know yet because it's just not available, and it's actually quite expensive, and I'll probably never ever see one in my lifetime. But anyway, in terms of looking at the reviews, it was just shown for the first time at a big tech launch event in Japan. There's a big tech conference there, and Canon showed off the Canon PowerShot V1 for the very first time. But they didn't send it out to vloggers, they didn't send it out to YouTube camera reviewers. Nobody has it from the West. It's only available in a very small audience here in Asia, and mainly in Japan. Nobody else has it. So I don't know much about it yet. But I was reading about it this morning a little bit and watching some video reviews, people who got to just look at it at this conference in Japan. And the one thing they said over and over was, okay, here's the big shutter button, and off on the right there's a small red button for shooting video. And that right away drives me nuts because they're telling us this is a video camera. It's a vlogging camera. It's video oriented. And yet the shutter button, the main button where your finger falls naturally, it's still for taking pictures. And the video recording button is off on the side. A small button, you can't even feel it. Like on my Olympus OMD EM5, it's the same thing. And when I'm out there using that camera and I want to shoot some video, I always have to stop and think because I got to move my camera. Okay, where is the video record button? Because I can't feel it. It's like, okay, I think here it is. Oh, there it is. And then I push on the video. So if you're going to tell me this is your new vlogging camera, you got to switch it around. Like for my money, the camera doesn't even need to take pictures. Like, don't even include that feature. Just get rid of everything to do with photography. It's a video camera, so I don't even need a shutter button for taking pictures. I need a shutter button for recording video. That's all I need. But anyway, that's where Dominik's question is coming from, because I rant about this all the time. And he's saying, well, camcorders. Camcorders are designed only to take video, so can that not solve your problem? And I have thought about that a lot in the past, and I've looked into it from time to time. And I don't have all the ideas and facts and figures and features in my head right now because it's been a long time. But I remember in the past looking into camcorders seriously, thinking, wow, they might be perfect. The way, even the design of them, they're long and you hold them like this and then it has the screen. And yeah, it's designed to shoot video rather than take pictures. But I kept running into a lot of issues with them. One of them being is that they're designed to be super zoom cameras because they're meant for the average home consumer going on vacation, and they want a huge zoom range. And those cameras are designed for that, for filming family, for zooming in on something far away when you're on vacation. So they tend not to be wide enough, the lens, and the sensor is very, very tiny. That's how they get away with the design they have. They're like smaller than I think what you get in a smartphone, like tiny, tiny sensors, which leads to issues with video quality, things like that, light, exposure to light, not good in low light at all. And then when you try to fix those problems, from what I remember, when I started finding, I'd look at the reviews of one camcorder and it wouldn't be suitable, but then they'd recommend, well, how about this one? And how about this one? And by the time I get to a camcorder that is remotely good enough, now we're talking about thousands of dollars. They're expensive, professional camcorders. So I could be wrong. There could be the perfect camcorder out there, and had I bought it years ago, I would still be using it today and raving about how amazing it is. But in my experience, from looking at reviews, they weren't really up to the task. Yeah, that's basically, yes, I have considered them deeply a long time ago, but I ended up kind of rejecting the idea out of hand. I didn't think it would work. I'm going to have trouble with this name. I'm going to have to ask this person which way to go on this, because this person has left a lot of comments on the Planet Doug Patreon, and we've talked back and forth quite a bit, but I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm not sure how it is supposed to be pronounced. Umma Gumma or Umma Gumma. Anyway, I'm assuming it's a man, just from the questions and the style of writing, but I don't know, man or woman. I don't know this person in real life, but I'll say he. He asks, so I have a question about your main channel, Planet Doug. How would you categorize yourself, or rather your YouTube channel? Are you a travel vlogger, or is your channel more about your life and what you do on a daily basis? Also an excellent question, which gets right to the heart of me as a YouTuber and Planet Doug, because I've struggled with this from the very beginning, and it's a very long and perhaps complicated story. I'll try to keep it simple. My instinct and how I thought of myself at the very beginning of shooting YouTube video was very much as a daily life approach. And this gets back to what I've talked about many times, is that I've historically been a journal keeper. So I write about my daily life down to the tiniest detail. So for many, many years of my life, I had the habit of waking up in the morning, and the first thing I do in the morning is have a cup of coffee, and I sit down with a notebook, back in those days, a notebook and a pen, and I write down a journal entry. And the journal entry was almost entirely about what I did the day before. Everything I did during that day, and then everything I did might connect to a topic, and then I might go off on a tangent and write about some other subject, but essentially it was a daily journal entry about my life, everything I did, everything I was thinking about. And I just do that instinctively. I've been doing it my whole life. And then that's one of the reasons I enjoyed traveling, which is kind of a weird thing when you think about it. You might think you go traveling because you will enjoy it, but in many ways I reversed it, that I would go traveling because I enjoyed writing so much, and traveling gave me more to write about. So in fact, it was writing in my journal. That was the thing that gave me the most pleasure, was writing. And I'm not writing about anything important. I'm not solving the world's energy crisis or starving people. I'm not writing about anything important. I'm just writing about me and my life, but I enjoyed it so much. And I discovered that if I went out somewhere and did something fun during the day, something interesting during the day, then the next morning, my writing was more pleasurable because I had more to write about. And then you do something like, going way back in time, when I was in university, I arranged to go to Guatemala for a semester, sort of like a self-organized study abroad in Guatemala. And then I would go there for the summer. And then, of course, every single day in Guatemala was a huge adventure. And every morning I would wake up and it was just like so many thoughts, so many ideas. And I'm writing and writing and writing and writing. So in fact, traveling and going on trips was a way to feed into my journal writing. It just gave me something to write about. My passion for the journal keeping was kind of that strong. So that's kind of an odd thing, but that's sort of how it started. And then when I discovered YouTube and video, I just flipped a switch in my head and thought, oh, instead of writing a journal entry, maybe I can make a journal video instead. And I thought it could be as simple as this, just sitting down in front of a camera and then just telling the story of what I did yesterday instead of writing it down, a video journal. And I played around with shooting video. This was way back when I was in Sumatra, I think, the first time I did it. I was just shooting random videos. And then I kind of morphed into recording video out on the streets, shooting. I go out to the market to find something to eat. And I only had a little Canon point and shoot camera at that time. Again, it was designed to take pictures, and a very cheap, poor quality camera. And my first videos were all shot on that camera. And I didn't know what I was doing, and everything was weird and everything was strange. And yeah, very, very bad sorts of videos. But I was experimenting with shooting video at that time, and I wasn't doing it seriously at all. But I was still thinking in terms of daily life vlogging. So even though I started recording actual video of what I was doing in real time, my focus was on the small things of life. So I didn't think of myself as like a travel vlogger who is showing the beautiful sights and the incredible places you can visit or in this or that country. My focus was more on the day-to-day experience of someone living overseas. And I always gravitate towards those stories. So, for example, back long ago, back in the days of travel books, I mentioned this book recently. There was a type of book that made big impressions on me, like A Year in Marrakesh, where, I haven't even thought about this book for ages, so I can't remember the author, their nationality, or anything about them. But this was back in the 60s, I think. And this person went to Morocco, and instead of traveling around, they got a cheap room because they were very poor. They were low budget kind of hippies, right? And he just got a very cheap room in a typical local neighborhood in Marrakesh. And he lived there for a year, and he wrote about living there, his day-to-day life. And that's what I always enjoyed. So that's where my heart is. That is where my instincts go. I like to tell that kind of story. And I remember being frustrated with some other travel books that became a little bit more like trying to be exciting and popular, where you go to page number 1 of the book and they're already in some faraway country. They're in the jungle and they're having some crazy adventure with the local tribal people that live in that jungle. And that's where the travel book starts, like right out of the gate. It's like a movie beginning with a huge explosion and a chase scene trying to get your attention. But I always hated that because I'm like, all right, well, how did you get there? That's the story I want to know about. Okay, you're in the middle of the Amazon jungle in this village with this group of people, but I want to know, well, how did you pay for the trip, and how did you get the visa for the trip, and where did you start from, and did you fly in, did you travel in overland, how are you changing money, how are you feeding yourself? Like, I want to know the actual day-to-day details of this person's life. I don't care about their huge adventures, the big drama. I'm more interested in the small things of life. So that is where my instincts go. So from that point of view, I'm very much a daily life vlogger. But as soon as I started shooting a lot of video, I quickly realized 2 things. One, I realized it takes a tremendous amount of time to make a video. So in the morning, I could write down a journal entry and be done in an hour. But if I try to make a video about yesterday, it will take me 2 to 3 days to make a video about that day, even though all I did was go out and get lunch. Video takes so much time. So making videos about your daily life is nearly impossible. And the second thing I discovered is that it's not really designed to gain a lot of popularity on YouTube. So sure, you can make those videos as a labor of love, and I enjoy that style, but they're not going to be popular. You're not going to get a lot of, if you're hoping for your YouTube channel to become bigger and grow and even earn an income, that's not the path to go down. So what I eventually decided to do was try to split into 2. And that's why I created the Planet Doug behind the scenes channel. So that was going to be my labor of love channel. And then Planet Doug was going to be my travel channel. This was the grand plan anyway. So for example, if tomorrow I go to a tourist attraction here in Kuala Lumpur, I will make a travel video about that place. A typical YouTuber type of video. I put that on Planet Doug, and then the next morning I wake up here in my hotel room and I sit down in front of the GoPro, and then I tell the behind the scenes daily life version of that story. Because in the travel video, in the tourism video, you can't include everything. The video would end up being 6 hours long, and you just can't do that. So my idea was to change my style, make shorter videos. I mean, I was going to make 20, 25-minute long videos, just like all the popular YouTubers, Itchy Boots, all these people. They all make 20 to 25-minute videos. So I was going to do that, concentrate on doing that, and then on behind the scenes, I can go nuts. I can sit here and I can do whatever I want. I can make a 3-hour video where I'm just talking. I can do time lapses. I can do this. I can do anything I want for fun behind the scenes and just put that all. And that would be for me. That would be my labor of love. And then Planet Doug would be the channel I'm trying to develop into something that has a wider audience and has the opportunity to grow and get a larger audience. So that was the master plan. So I'm not sure if I answered your question. Am I a travel vlogger or a daily life vlogger? I started as a daily life vlogger, and then I realized I should be a travel vlogger, and then I decided to try to do both. And that's kind of where I am right now. But it never really worked, because my instincts are so strong for telling the whole story. Like when I went to Bukit Dinding on this hike, the night before, I even told myself, okay, don't do a Planet Doug style video. Let's try and keep it under control. So I decided in advance the video was going to start when I'm on the trail. So don't turn on the GoPro until I get to the hiking trail. And then I'm on the trail, and then I hit record. And like, here I am on the Kazumi Trail in Bukit Dinding. And then the video would contain nothing but the experience of hiking the trail. And that's it. And that was my plan. And then I woke up in the morning to go to Bukit Dinding, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't follow through. So as I was leaving here, I had so many things I wanted to talk about. I thought, okay, I give in. And I got my GoPro out of my knapsack. I had everything packed away. And then I got my GoPro out, put on the microphone, got everything ready. And then I started recording as I walked to the LRT station, as I rode the train to the other LRT station, as I walked to the hiking trail, as I waited 40 minutes for the sun to come up so I could start the hike. I recorded all of that time, and all of that put together, plus the hiking, ends up being about 3 hours of video. So I tried so hard to make a 20-minute exciting travel video, and I failed miserably. So then I had 3 hours of video, and I tried to make two versions. I made a 1 hour video for Planet Doug, and then I made an extended cut of over 2 hours, also for Planet Doug, and I recorded like a 3 hour journal video the next day where I told the story all over again with even more detail. So I'm 100% insane when it comes to this. And I've been doing this long enough that I keep waiting for a pattern to develop, and something, like a routine where I could be producing a 20 hour, Freudian slip there, a 20-minute travel video for Planet Doug. That's it. And then a longer behind the scenes version for behind the scenes, and then keep those two worlds completely separate. But so far I haven't been able to do that. And Umma Gumma, or Umma Gumma, he goes on to sort of clarify his question a little bit, where he says, I know you are still traveling, but you seem to base yourself in one city and kind of do local vlogs that revolve around your daily life, rather than actually hopping from place to place and documenting your travels. For the lack of a better definition, a typical YouTube travel vlogger. And that is true. I do like to stay in one place, and I enjoy doing that more. I mentioned a year in Marrakesh. That's the experience I like. The actual traveling within a country, I don't really like it that much, because I don't even see the point, to be honest. Like, say you're in Canada, my home country, and now you've flown around the world to Sumatra. You've gone to Indonesia, now you're in Sumatra. That's your traveling. You've traveled from one country to another country, and all that entire country is all around you in whatever town or city you're in. So if you're looking for the contrast, what makes Indonesia special, you don't have to go very far to see it. You never even have to leave that one town. I know you're supposed to. Well, you got to go to Sulawesi, then you've got to go to Bali, and you've got to do Sumatra, and you've got to go to all these cities, all these other places. But my instinct is, well, why? Right? Like when I was in Tanjung Balai recently in Sumatra, I went out in that city a lot, and I know it quite well because I've actually been there many times. And yet, despite being there many times, there are still dozens of things I could do in Tanjung Balai. Hundreds of restaurants I haven't been, thousands of people I haven't met, hundreds of places I haven't gone to. Same thing for Kuala Lumpur. As a tourist here in Kuala Lumpur, you might think I've done just about everything. I've been to so many museums, so many markets, so many neighborhoods, and yet when I look at Google Maps, there's still tons of museums I haven't gotten around to, markets I haven't gone to, restaurants, foods I haven't tried. So I mean, I could go to Ipoh, I could go to Malacca. Everyone keeps telling me, well, you got to go to Ipoh, you got to go to Malacca, and I agree, I should. You got to go to Cameron Highlands, you got to go here, you got to go there. But at the same time, I'm very aware that there's so much right in KL I still haven't experienced, done, seen. So like, yeah. And that's kind of where, yeah, my habits come from. This idea that, say, you're in Sumatra and you want to learn about Indonesian food, well, you don't have to travel for 18 hours in a bus to get to another town, because right where you are, there's a restaurant right across the road you haven't gone to yet. You just walk across the road and, oh, what do you make here? And you know, that pattern, you want to learn about Indonesian music, well, they've got it right there in that town. Indonesian sports, whatever topic you want to mention, well, they have it in that Indonesian town. You don't actually have to travel across all of Indonesia to go to a new town when you haven't even fully explored the town you're in. So, yeah, I guess that's that's the way my brain works when it comes to that topic. He has another question, totally different. What kind of career did you have before becoming a YouTuber? And that's pretty simple. When I got out of university, I actually studied international development. So as far as I had a life plan or a career plan, I went to university intending to work in the field of NGOs. Because that's kind of the world I grew up in as a Canadian, growing up in the 60s and 70s. We had this view of the world where there's countries like Canada, and then there's all these poor countries around the world, in Asia, in South America, in Africa. And then I lived in this world where we wanted to help the people of those countries. That's kind of the environment I grew up in. And then I went to university to study this field, and I was going to get a job with Oxfam, with the United Nations, with name any one of the hundreds of NGOs that are working around the world to better the lives of people overseas. I wasn't really committed to it. I didn't have a passion for it, but I don't have a lot of ambition for myself. I have no ambitions. I've never been interested in anything really like wow, I got to get a big house and a nice car, and I want to go skiing in the Alps. And I don't really have that pleasure gene. I would rather help somebody else have fun than have fun myself, because I don't really know how to have fun. I enjoy working. I get the most pleasure out of working and making something and working on a project. That's my pleasure. So, like, put me in a 5-star hotel that has, an amazing seafood platter and a swimming pool and a sauna. I'd probably stay there for a month, and I would never go to the pool. I'd never use the sauna, and I would never have the seafood platter, because I wouldn't get much enjoyment out of those things. I'd sit in my room the whole time doing this, or working on some sort of other Patreon project or something. So pleasure is lost on me. So there's no point to me getting a good job where I can make a lot of money so I can go skiing in the Alps, because even if I had a lot of money, I wouldn't do any of those things anyway. So anyway, I thought, well, since I don't have any ambitions for myself, why don't I dedicate my life to helping other people achieve their ambitions? They know how to be happy. Let me work for an NGO, and they can drop me into Africa, where I imagine there were all these poor people that I could help. And then I grew up a little bit because I started doing some traveling. I went to some other countries on a youth exchange project on my own. And then as I was studying this topic in university, to be honest, almost every course I took was about how all of these NGO efforts to help people in other countries ended up doing more harm than good. And if they didn't do any harm, they certainly didn't do anything good. And then as I started to travel, I saw evidence of this myself. And the whole idea of me as a Canadian going to another country and then walking into some village and going, "Hey, I'm here to help you." Like, what do I know? I was just a dumb kid. Everybody in the world knows more about everything than I do. It seems very arrogant for me to go somewhere and think I know something that is going to help them make their lives better. And anyway, I just never saw my way into that world. And the more contact I had with that world, the people who worked in it, the less value I saw in it. And to be honest, the less I liked the people who worked in that, like the whole atmosphere of these NGOs, the language they used. And anyway, that whole world just wasn't for me. So even though I trained for it and went to university for it, I never even got one job in that field. Even now, occasionally I think, oh, I need a job, I need money. YouTube isn't paying the bills, I need to get a job. And I think, well, maybe I can work for an NGO. And then I go online and I look at the job postings and the mumbo jumbo that goes on for thousands of words in the job description. By the time I'm done reading what the job is, I have no idea what the job is. It's like, what am I supposed to do? Like, what? It's just a mishmash of weird vocabulary and catchphrases that I guess only people in the world of NGOs understand. I don't understand. You could hire me for that job and I could show up in the office and I'd have to say to the person beside me, like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I don't know what my job is. I don't understand any of the job description. Anyway, so long story there, but what I ended up doing at some point was hopping on a flight from Toronto to Seoul because I'd heard that you could get a job teaching English in South Korea. I heard you could get a job in either South Korea, in Japan, or Taiwan. Those are the three countries I kept hearing about. Of course, you could teach English anywhere, but those were the three countries where there were a lot of jobs available, I heard, and then you could make enough money, you could save up enough money after a year to have some money saved up. You could go on to do something else. And of course, my idea was to go to South Korea for a year, have a big adventure, teach English, and then go back to Canada and become a normal person and finally figure out what I want to do with life and get a real job, etc., etc. But that 1 year in Korea just morphed into, how many years has it been? It's morphed into, that was in 1991, so 25. That morphed into, 34 years, and I haven't ever gone back to get a real job. So basically, my career before YouTube, if you want to call YouTube a career, was teaching English and then editing and writing in English, but for the ESL industry. So when I was living in Korea, I was teaching English, and then people just offered me jobs as an English teacher. They'll just say, oh, listen, I have a resume, but I wrote it, and can you fix the English? So I started proofreading and editing and rewriting resumes. And then I got jobs for companies, proofreading and editing and writing. And then they needed people to record documents in English inside studios. So I started doing a lot of voice recording. And then eventually I quit teaching English completely because I was making better money and enjoying myself a lot more doing work as an editor and writer and proofreader and voice recorder, things like that. Like I would even be given movies and they would say, well, we need subtitles in English for this movie. So I would get a stack of movies and I could sit in my apartment and watch movies, and I'd write out the English subtitles for that movie. Or they'd give me a stack of CDs. I get like 20. Back in those days, we all used CDs. I get 20 CDs of famous musical artists, and they would need the song lyrics. For some reason, they couldn't get them. These would be companies like Polygram and Sony and like all the big music companies. But for some reason, they couldn't get the lyrics to that music, and they would pay me to listen to the music and write down the lyrics to the songs. And I do want to emphasize that when I did this for movies and TV shows, my captions were perfect. Every single word was perfect. I get so annoyed when I watch movies now and TV shows and they have captions and they're all wrong and they're so lazy. And you can tell they were not done by a native English speaker, and they were not done by anybody who cared about their job. And these people probably got paid to do that work, and it annoys me terribly. Anyway, if you see any captions, subtitles in a movie and they're wrong, I didn't do it. Mine were perfect. So I just wanted to make that point. And then I moved from South Korea to Taiwan, and I started off in Taiwan teaching English again. And my life kind of spun out of control when I was in Taiwan for many reasons. And I had a variety of jobs at the beginning. I worked for Berlitz for a while. I had a work visa for Berlitz, and I don't even know if Berlitz exists anymore, but I was teaching English with them. I had a job teaching at a small school for young children. That didn't last very long because children don't like me and I don't like children, so we never managed to get along. And I got a job at a local newspaper, like one of the big English language newspapers. They hired me as an editor, and that job did not last long either. It was like one of the worst jobs I've ever had, because it was an actual, did I say Korean? I meant Taiwan, and it was Taiwanese. And it was run as a traditional Taiwanese company, the work environment, and it was just awful, one of the worst environments I've ever been in. So then, yeah, that job didn't last. And then I got a job with a company that made magazines and textbooks for teaching English. And they had to pump out these magazines. They're monthly, month after month after month. They had a whole series of them, 5 or 6 of them, like business English, and then different levels, like university level, and then high school level, elementary school level. And they needed an English editor like me to work on each one of those magazines. And I worked for that company for many, many years. And essentially, all the money that I saved up at that job for this company, I've been living on that money, the savings from that job, ever since I quit. So all the traveling I've been doing for the last over a decade has all been basically spending my savings from that job. So yeah, so that was my career. If you want to call YouTube a career, my career before YouTube was teaching English and editing and writing and voice recording in English. Finally, and as part of this same question, Umma Gumma asks, also, did you lose interest in exploring new places in the world, or is that by design and have a reason behind it? I don't think I ever lost interest, but this attitude that I talked about, where I thought to experience what I was interested in was being overseas. I found it interesting to be overseas, but I never really found it that interesting to be traveling all the time. So, I mean, I've always had that instinct. So I was never much of a traveler, to be honest. I was more of a hunker down and just live in one place. That's what I enjoy. So, yeah, many times I even would plan a big trip. Like so many people do this, where they get out a map of the world and they're like, oh, I'm so excited, I want to go here and here and here. And they draw a line that takes them all the way around the world. I would do the same. And I did it one time my first trip to Africa. I wanted to go to East Africa, and my idea was to go to all of East Africa, starting in Ethiopia. And then I flew into Ethiopia, and I never left. So I spent an entire year, almost a year, in Ethiopia, and I never went south. I never went to Kenya or Tanzania or Malawi or Zambia or Zimbabwe. I never went to any of these other countries that I planned on going to, because I never saw a reason to go there. There was so much in Ethiopia. I mean, I could have spent a decade in just Ethiopia, and I'd never have run out of things to do, new experiences to have. So, and then crossing borders is such a hassle, and it's so expensive, the new visas, changing money and all that kind of stuff. And what I was looking for, I think, was what I talked about at the very beginning. I was looking for just interesting things to happen in my life to feed my brain so that I had new things to think about, new things to write about. And I didn't need to travel to have that. I just needed to be somewhere different from Canada. So to be honest, even in Ethiopia, I could have spent a year in Addis Ababa, just in that city, and never run out of new things I just wanted my days to be more active, to be richer. And when you go overseas, particularly in a place like Ethiopia, you don't have a choice. You're going to have adventures whether you want to or not, because the entire world just spills over into your life. It just forces its way in. So even if you're a little bit of an introvert and you find it hard to go out and have adventures, in a place like Ethiopia, in a place like Sumatra, you don't have to worry about it. You can just sit in your hotel room, and the country is going to come in and get you, and is going to drag you kicking and screaming outside. Anyway, you're going to have adventures whether you want to or not. So that's pretty much all I've ever been looking for. So that would be my instinct, which is why I may not always go to new places all the time. I'm not sure if I answered that full question. So yeah, I didn't really lose interest in exploring new places, because I never really had a strong interest in it to begin with. But there is also this element that, well, I'm in my 60s now. I find it hard to believe I'm 61 years old, and I have been to enough places that I don't have the urge as strongly as I used to go to new places. Because I think in the old days, like when you're young, it's almost, you almost feel like, and I know what I did, I thought there was a period in my life where I'm learning everything. And then once I've learned everything, then my life can begin. So I'm trying to get to this point. So back in those days, there weren't as many movies as there are now. There wasn't as much music. There weren't as many books. And I was trying to learn everything. So I wanted to learn everything I could about history and culture and science and biology and geography. And it felt important to go to a lot of different countries, right? You see people who make it their passion to go to more countries than other people. It's almost like they're putting together a resume. It's like, hey, I've been to 99 countries, and my goal is to go to 100 countries, as if that's some kind of an accomplishment. And I think when you're young, it's easy to have that attitude, and I had it as well. But then I realized that it doesn't matter. It honestly makes no difference. I've talked about this before, where now that I'm 61, I've been to countries that I don't even remember at all. I've had entire trips I have no memory of, right? So maybe, I could put it on my resume. I could say to people, yeah, I had this huge adventure one time where I was in Korea and I got on this boat. I took a boat from Korea to China, and I traveled all over this part of China, and I went to Shanghai, and I did this and I did that. And I can present that to somebody as part of my travel credentials. But I don't remember that trip. because I wasn't taking pictures at that time. And maybe I have a journal that I wrote about it, but I don't even remember that. If I have a journal, it's in storage back in Canada. So this idea of amassing new countries starts to feel a bit ridiculous. Like, why do I have to go to countries I've never been to before when I've already been to countries I don't even remember going to? If you see what I mean. Yeah, I mean, eventually you get to a point in age where you've done so many things and you've lived so long, you don't even remember them anymore. So it's hard to get excited about, like, I've never been to Mongolia, and you might think, oh, it's going to be so amazing to have been to Mongolia. I can become a person who's been to Mongolia. I can put it on my travel credentials. But like I said, I've been to places I don't even remember being to. So I don't really have this urge to tick off countries in a box. Like, oh, I've been to France, I've been to Belgium, I've been to England, I've been to Scotland, I've been to Poland. I don't really feel the need to check all those boxes anymore, because, I mean, especially with the internet these days and Google Maps and satellite view, it's almost like you could go to these places virtually. It's not the same, obviously, as going there in real life, and it's the same thing for experiences. Long ago, of course, when I was young, I had never been to a fish market in Asia. And the first one I went to, boom, blew my mind. It's like, whoa, like, what an experience. I'd never seen anything like it before. And maybe the next 10 times I went to an early morning fish market, it blew my mind. But at this point in my life, well, yeah, I've been to so many early morning fish markets. I kind of got the idea. I know what it's all about. I would still go and I would enjoy it, and I would shoot video and take pictures and enjoy the environment. But I don't have quite as strong an urge to go anymore, because I kind of know what to expect. Same thing for a produce market, any kind of night market that sells food and snacks. And I think that's kind of where I suffer as a YouTuber a little bit, because I do watch these YouTube videos from young people in their 20s who are going to other countries for the first time, having these experiences for the first time, and they bring a level of energy and enthusiasm to their experiences that I could never replicate. I had those experiences, but I had them 40 years ago, 50 years ago, no, 30, 40 years ago. I don't want to go too crazy. I'm not Methuselah here, but still, I've done a lot of these things so many times that, yeah, your enthusiasm for new experiences does dwindle a little bit, at least from the point of view of ticking off boxes, because I've done a lot of these things already. And again, that gets back to the whole idea of, I don't have a pleasure gene. So when I was young, I remember I really wanted to go skiing. When I was young, skiing was for rich people. And when I saw skiing, and then it turned into snowboarding later on, and then I had the opportunity to do it. I got a job at a ski resort in the Rocky Mountains in Canada. So I got a winter job where I was running one of the chairlifts. I was, what do we call ourselves? I was a lifty. Yeah, lifty. That's what we called people who worked on chairlifts. You were a lifty. And the benefit of this job, because you got paid almost nothing, but you got to ski and snowboard as much as you wanted. Like every weekend, you had 2 days off, and you could ski for free. So I went snowboarding and I went skiing for 2 winters, and I've never done it again, because, I mean, I enjoyed it as a new experience. But once I had the experience, okay, I've been snowboarding in deep powder in the Rocky Mountains of Canada. I treated it as kind of a new thing to do, a new experience to have. But it's not something that I enjoyed so much that I have to do it every year. As far as I'm concerned, I never have to do it again. I know people who love snowboarding, they have to go snowboarding every winter. I mean, of course, they have enough money to do it as well, which I don't. Maybe if I were wealthy, I would do more things like that. But anyway, and again, in terms of have I lost interest in things? Not really. But again, I don't have to repeat a lot of experiences. I went scuba diving. I got certified as a scuba diver, open water certification. I did that in the Philippines. And I've never gone scuba diving again. And I don't feel like I really need to, because I've had that experience. I wanted to go swimming with whale sharks. That was like a thing I always wanted to do. And I did that in the Philippines. But I don't need to do it again. I guess I would enjoy doing it again, but I don't need to go on a trip and spend money to go do it a second time because I've already done it. So there is that sense of losing interest because you're getting older and you've already done these things so many times, and the fact that I lack the pleasure gene. So I don't need to do these things over and over again. I can do it once, and that was pretty cool, but I don't really need to do it again. I don't know if I answered all of those questions completely. I went off on some tangents there, but I talked around those questions, and I hope that was somewhat interesting. So now I have a question from OK27, and OK27 asks, "Hi Douglas, I'm interested to know how you handle your banking transactions technically. Can you keep an account in Malaysia, for example, as a long-term tourist? You obviously have an account in Canada too. As far as I know, you need a postal address for an account. But as you mentioned, you don't have a permanent address in your home country. How does that work for you? If your bank card is lost or expires, how do you get a new card? Thanks in advance for answering." It's true. I've never been able to open a bank account overseas on a tourist visa. I've tried in multiple countries, thinking eventually maybe I'll be able to figure out a way to do it. No. So here in Malaysia, can't do it. I've been to several banks here, and I go in and say, "Can I open a bank account?" And they say, "Well, to do that, you have to be a resident of Malaysia." You don't have to be a Malaysian citizen, but you have to be a resident, which means you have a permanent address and you have some sort of permanent authorization to be in the country, a student visa, maybe a work visa, a residence visa, something. You've got to have something that proves you are living in Malaysia with an address. Then you can open a bank account. But as soon as you tell them, "No, I just have a tourist visa," no, you can't open a bank account. So I've never been able to do that. The only bank account I have is back in Canada, and it's the same bank account I've had for a very long time in my life. And the way that works is I don't have anywhere to live in Canada, but technically I live with my brother. My brother has a house in Canada, and I use his address as my mailing address. So for my bank in Canada, that is my physical residence in Canada. And then my brother handles my mail for me. So I do everything online now, of course. I do all my banking online, paying bills, transferring money, things like that. But in terms of a bank account and the address associated with that account, it is my address in Canada. When I'm in Canada, I stay with my brother. So that is where I would live. And then if I get a new credit card, a new bank card, it physically has to be mailed to that address. And luckily I have my brother that I can rely on, and then he picks it out of the mail. I know the card is coming, so I give him a heads up. And then we talk on the phone frequently. And then I tell him, "Yeah, there's a bank card coming. Can you keep an eye on the mailbox?" And then he will mail it to me if I need it. A lot of these cards I don't even need because I don't use them overseas. So all I need is the number, right? And I need it to be updated, but I don't need the physical card anyway, so I can just leave it in Canada. So depends on the situation, but then my brother will mail it to me. and I give him an address. I'll ask a friend of mine, like here in Kuala Lumpur, who has a house, a stable address, and say, oh, can my brother mail something to your house? And then it gets mailed there, and then I pick it up. So it's pretty complicated, but that's basically how I do it. So I do maintain an address in Canada. That's where I would stay. Like if I went back to Canada right now, I'd go to my brother's house maybe and knock on the door and say, do you have a couch for me? Can I sleep on the floor? So that's where I live in Canada, and I use that address, and my brother sends everything to me here because I can't open bank accounts anywhere else because I'm always on a tourist visa. A question from Koo Keng Kong. Just curious, how much is your monthly budget including everything? Thanks. Yeah, that question, even I don't know. I can't really answer that question completely because I don't really have a budget. I sort of I have been living day to day for a very long time, and I haven't set a budget. I don't follow a budget, and I don't keep track of anything. But the way I do it, of course, is I just look for the cheapest options. Because back in the days when I was a backpacker, I had a fixed amount of money. Like I would work in South Korea for 1 year, and I might save up, say, $8,000, and then I would quit my job and want to go traveling or live somewhere else, and then I would try and make that $8,000 last as long as possible. So I wasn't dividing it up and saying, I can spend this much per month. All I did was look for the cheapest hotel, the cheapest restaurants, the cheapest form of transportation. And that just became a habit over time. And I have that same habit right up until today. I can't, it's hard to break that habit once it's built into you. So I don't really have a budget, but I mean, if I tried to give you an example of how much money I spend right now, it depends on the country. Malaysia, for example, is much more expensive for me than Sumatra. It would be much more expensive than Vietnam. So each country has a different amount. But you basically take a month, 30 days, how much would you spend per night on a hotel? Call it like $10 a night. If you can get away with that, $5 to $10. That's pretty rare to get down to $5 these days. But then you're looking at what, $300 for the month in rent. You could say $5 to $10 a month in food. So that's another $200 to $300. And then you've got flights, visas. And these days, a substantial amount of money goes towards online subscriptions. I guess my world has gone a little bit out of control lately because I've done so many things because I store pictures online. So I pay for a monthly store, like an archive and website hosting and this and that and that. And then every month or two, I'll get like a notification that says, oh, we have just charged X amount of dollars to your credit card for your photo storage, oh, for your website, oh, for your domain. And it adds up to a surprisingly large amount of money. I think I've got to get that under control. I'm spending way too much money on these things. And I don't think I need all of it because I think I'm paying for like premium plans that I don't actually need because like I have a website and I have 2 websites. I have 3, who knows? And I've never been able to do anything with them. The website technology has just defeated me. And yet I'm paying for website hosting and things like that. And I thought it would kind of become something, and it never became anything. So it's just like a financial drain. So there's that as well. You have to add into the monthly budget, but depending on the country, it could be as low as $500 in a month, even lower than that. An expensive month for me would be $1,000. That would be a lot of money in a month, like US dollars. So, but yeah, that's basically how I approach it. These days, things have gotten a little bit more expensive because cheap hotels don't exist anymore. And I can't stay in really, really like dorm stuff like that. I can't do that because I have too much electronic equipment and some of it is expensive. Kind Planet Doug subscribers, for example, who gave me my current laptop, I can't leave that in a dorm room. I can't risk it being stolen, my GoPros, camera gear. Yeah, so I can't stay in a dorm. Not that I could anyway, because I need too much space. I need to plug in too many things. I'm charging too many batteries. I need my own room. And these days, even like in Malaysia, it's hard to even find a room. The old backpacker style, like $5 a night. I remember like going way back in time. I lived in Ecuador for 6 months in Quito. I stayed in the city of Quito for 6 months. I got a 6-month visa, and I lived in the city of Quito the entire time. And my room there cost $1 per night. And of course, it was a pretty basic room, but it was like the best room I've ever stayed in terms of memories of just such an amazing place. But it was $30 a month. So that would have been, a very cheap 6 months for me. I paid $180 for 6 months for rent, basically $1 per night. And that's how it used to be in the old days. And when I traveled around places like Cambodia, Nepal, and Philippines, things like that, yeah, you're looking for rooms from $2 to $5 a night back in the old days. And now those rooms don't exist anymore. So you're almost forced to stay in nicer rooms these days. Like this room is a low budget place, but I've got an air conditioner, I've got a TV, I've got hot water, I've got Wi-Fi, I've got electricity. I mean, to me, this is like luxury. And this is like the cheapest room I can find in Kuala Lumpur, unless I go down to a dorm. Unless, of course, you book like a student room and you commit to staying for 3 months, and then you can get a cheaper room. But if you're staying in places where you pay by the night, you're in a place like Malaysia, it gets more expensive now. But yeah, so that's my approach to budget. So yeah, when I was looking at YouTube and Patreon, one of the reasons I'm still doing it, working as hard as I work on YouTube videos and now on Patreon, things like that, it doesn't seem like it should be that hard, because my needs are so few. Like for me, if I could earn $1,000 a month, I mean, I would be on cloud 9, right? My life is so simple that $1,000 a month would keep me on the road forever. But even earning that much money these days, say on YouTube or Patreon or wherever, yeah, you can't do it unless somehow you get that magic something where the videos you make become popular at the level of like super popular YouTubers. They make huge amounts of money, like someone like Nora Lee on Itchy Boots, Bald and Bankrupt, the superstars of YouTube. Of course, they make vast amounts of money, but my needs are so small compared to them. I wouldn't know what to do with all that money. Like my needs are so small. Like if I could make $1,000 a month, I'm like, ha, that would be amazing. But yeah, because that would be, I mean, that would cover a good budget for me for the month. So yeah, still working, still making YouTube videos. I have a question from KY, my friend here in Kuala Lumpur. He writes, last minute, would you update your business cards by adding a QR code link to the Planet Doug Patreon? Short answer is yeah, that would be great. I have these Planet Doug business cards that I made, and these days you see QR codes more and more. So if I could put like a QR code on there to Patreon, yeah, I would do it. But as far as I know, it doesn't exist. Like Patreon doesn't give you something like that. But I did look online briefly, and I think you can make your own. Like there are companies out there or websites where you can input a website URL, and it will create a QR code for you that leads to that link to that website, and then you could put that on your name card. So yeah, if I can figure out how to do that, yeah, I would for sure. And I think YouTube now provides a QR code to the YouTuber. So I could put on a QR code to my YouTube channel and to my Patreon. And then people could just scan the code and then it would take them right there. So short answer, yeah, absolutely I would do it. But I would like to have graphics. I don't have any Planet Doug graphics. I've never gotten around to making any. So I don't have any interesting pictures. I don't have a color scheme. I don't have anything. So, I would just make my own simple business card, a picture of me, and then just says Planet Doug, listing YouTube, Patreon, and then a couple of QR codes. Yeah, I would do that. Yeah, it would be very, very handy. What is the next question? Daniel, how many hours in total did you hike in Bukit Dinding? How many hours going up versus how many hours going down? Off the top of my head, I don't know, but let's say you went there and all you did was start at the bottom, hike to the top, hang out, take some pictures, take some video, hike, go back down again. It wouldn't take you that long. You could get to the top in an hour, I think, and then you could come back down in less than an hour. So yeah, you could do the whole trail that I took in 2 hours comfortably. But of course I took a lot longer because, I think I woke up at 4:30 in the morning. I was on the train at 6. I got to the hiking area way before the sun was even up. So then I got there too early, and then I had to wait for the sun to come up because the trail, you couldn't do it in the dark. It would be too dangerous to do in the dark. So I had to wait for a long time, hour and a half or so, 2 hours, I don't know what it was, for it to become light enough. And then I was talking to people, and then of course I spent so much time shooting video, setting up the GoPro, climbing up a section, and then going back down, getting the GoPro, climbing back up again. So I would do each section of the trail. Sometimes I would do them 3 times. It takes time to set up the GoPro, and then you go up, go back down, go back up again, and then, so I was there for a long time. I was there for many hours. So I think I left here at like 5:30 in the morning, maybe 6 o'clock, maybe. Yeah, it was after 6. And then I didn't get back here until 2 or 3 in the afternoon. So it could have been a 2-hour hike up and down, but I turned it into my hiking time could have been 4 hours. I was on the trail, something like that. You could probably look on Relive, my Relive app, might have some time codes on it, might even say exactly how long it took. I can probably look at some pictures and look at the time code and see exactly how long it took. Let me do that right now. The modern world, so amazing that you can even do that. Digital photos, of course, have all the information embedded in them. So it looks like from when I started hiking was at 8 a.m., almost exactly 8 a.m., and I finished the hike at 1. So in fact, I was on that trail for 5 hours. Yeah, I didn't know I was up there for that long, but yeah, from 8 until 1. So, and I was even there earlier, so I arrived at something like before 7 in the morning. I arrived at the trailhead, but I didn't begin hiking until 8. And then I came down and I finished the hike at 1 o'clock. So the whole day was quite long, but I was on the trail for 5 hours. But I think an average, a person who's in good condition, you could do it in 2. Even shorter than 2, I think an hour up, less than an hour coming down. But that's the Kazumi Trail. And if you do the Mini Tahan Trail, that's a lot longer. It's like 7 kilometers long. That's just the trail, and then you still have to get back to the beginning. So that would take longer, even if all you're doing is hiking. But the Kazumi Trail that I did, and then going up to KLCC, Lookout Point, and then the peak and down again, probably 2 hours you could do it. Rai, he asks a question, and he writes, "Hi Doug, you may have touched on this before, but at what point in your life did you realize that you were meant to be a nomad and traveler? Was there ever a time when you considered moving back to Canada, getting a job, and settling down?" Yeah, interesting question. I don't think I ever realized it the way that you're asking that question, because I never really decided on any particular path. It all just sort of happened. Yeah. Was there ever a time when you considered moving back, getting a job? Well, yeah, kind of all the time, but I couldn't think of any particular thing to do, right? I mean, even like if I close my eyes and imagine it, I just don't see any future at all. And I guess that relates to my belief that I couldn't make any money anyway. Like, if I try to, like, you do sort of a thought experiment, and I think, yeah, go back to Canada, get a job, settle down. But the whole scenario falls apart right out of the gate because, well, what job? Like, I can't think of any job I want to do. And then you've got to get a place to live. And I don't even know if I could do it in Canada anymore. I couldn't afford it, for one thing. Places to live in Canada. When I left, an expensive apartment, like you get a 1-bedroom apartment for $300 a month. Now you're looking at $2,000 to $3,000. I don't know how anybody survives. I look at the cost of rent, I look at the cost of food, the cost of transportation, everything. I don't know how anybody in Canada survives. So it's like, it's out of the question right from the beginning. But then even if, say, someone offered me a job, I get an email that says, wow, Mr. Douglas, we've looked at your YouTube channel. We think you are a man of many, many talents. We want you at our company, and we're going to give you $180,000 a year to come. And I go, wow, I can't turn that down. And I go back, and then, I don't know, I can't see my day-to-day life. I can't imagine it. Like, where would I live? And now what do I do? My alarm goes off in the morning. I have breakfast. I take the train, the subway into the office. I sit at the desk and I work at whatever it is they want me to do. And then I go home at the end of the day. And then do I watch TV at night? Like, what do I do? And then I wake up the next morning and do it all over again. Or maybe I live in a house, but on the weekend I got to cut the grass and I've got to paint the house, scrape the paint and paint it. And I got to look at the eaves trough needs replacing, and I hire a contractor to do it. Or like, I cannot imagine any kind of a life. It just doesn't compute at all. And the thing is, I think you can have a really good life in Canada if you have a lot of money, but then you kind of have to work into sort of a weekend warrior perspective, where you work 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and on the weekend you've got all this money and you can go do something on the weekend. But I'm not very good at that sort of stuff. You have to plan that trip and make a lot of arrangements, and then you've got Friday night, Saturday, Sunday to do it, and then you got to get back because you got to get back to work on Monday. That weekend warrior, I just don't have enough energy for that. It takes a lot for me to plan to do something. And if I make a plan to do something, I want it to be something big, so that I can get as much value out of all the effort of making the plan to begin with, if that makes any sense. Like, instead of planning for a 2-day trip on the weekend, if I'm going to plan to go somewhere, I want to go there for 6 months. Like right now, I'm planning to return to Sumatra. If I could, I'd stay there for 6 months, because for me, it takes so much mental effort to do the trip. Like to get going, to go there, where you got to get the visa, arrange transportation, fly there, take the boat there, get there. That takes so much work and mental energy from me that when I get there, I want to stay for at least 1 month, at least 2 months, because I can get a 30-day visa on arrival, which I already have, and then I can get an extension. So What I like to do is make one decision, and that one decision leads me to a year of adventure where you don't have to make any more decisions. So for example, I've already talked about it in this video, when I went to Ethiopia, going to Ethiopia was a big decision, and then planning to get there, because I had to get a touring bicycle, I got all my vaccinations, changing money, like getting money back in those days. There were no ATMs or anything. You had to get traveler's checks. A lot of work went into planning the trip, booking the flight, getting the bike ready, doing the research, getting the maps, all the things you need. And then you fly into Ethiopia, and then for the next year, you just have endless adventures. Because every day you wake up in the morning and you're riding your bicycle to get to the next place, and you have adventures all day long. And I'm not sure I'm making any sense, but you don't have to work anymore to have the adventures. The adventures just pour into your life. You can't stop them. And I like that. So I like to make that one decision. There was a time I rode my bike across Canada. It was part of a bigger, crazier project that didn't work, but I basically made the decision to ride my bike across Canada, and that one decision led to months and months and months of adventures. So a weekend warrior lifestyle, it's not going to work for me, because I can't get up the energy to make a decision to go do something, like to wake up on Saturday morning and go have a big adventure, knowing I can stay there for one night and then I got to come back because I got to go to work on Monday. I just don't have the energy to do that. So going back to Canada, I just couldn't see how things would work out. But again, I never really decided to live the life that I have. I actually decided to have very different lives, but I never followed through on any of those decisions. I've sort of been living one day at a time. I make a decision, like, what am I going to do today? And then I'm in this country, and every single day I just say, what am I going to do today? And then my visa expires, and then I'm forced to leave that country and go to a new country because the visa kicked me out. And then the process starts all over again. And then I'd run out of money, and then I have no choice. I have to fly back to South Korea to get a new job teaching English. I'm forced to do that. So basically, I seem to be living my life 24 hours at a time until I reach some sort of a point where I'm forced to change direction and do something else. I have to get a job because I ran out of money. I have to leave the country because my visa expired. And I get forced to go on to the next stage. And I've done that for, how long have I said it's been? From 1991, even way before 91. My whole life, I think, from the day I was born, that's how I've lived. I've never actually committed to anything beyond 24 hours. And you add up 365 24-hour periods, you get 1 year. You do that 61 times, and here we are today. So I never really decided to do anything. I just sort of get forced into making a choice, and then I go from there. I don't know, it's not a good way to live, but that's sort of what happened to me. And yeah, looking back, it seems kind of inevitable now. That's just how my brain works. Okay, last question for February's Ask Me Anything. This one came in right under the wire. Bing Lim asks, I have always been curious, but thought it would be impolite to ask, but I will ask anyway. How long ago was it that you worked as a teacher, interpreter, or writer? And how many years do you estimate before you need to get your next contract or job? Have you been looking to see what's available? You don't have to answer if this is too personal. I'm very happy to answer. Very little would be too personal. This is, after all, Ask Me Anything. So yeah, okay. Question. How long ago was it that you worked as a teacher, interpreter, or writer? I was trying to think of that this morning, and I'm not 100% sure right now. I'm going to have to look at something online to get an actual date. I'll be right back. I went back into my journals, going way back in time, and as far as I can tell, I left from my last job in Taiwan as in 2013. So early 2013, I left from Taiwan. I had a job there, an apartment, a pretty established life, and I shut all that down and got rid of the apartment, and so then I left from Taiwan. So that was 2013. So what's that? 12 or 13 years ago? Is that right? Yeah, something like 12 or 13 years ago. And the other question is probably the more interesting one. How many more years do I think I have to wait until I have to go back and get another contract and job? Well, technically the answer is 0. I'm just getting to the end of my savings right now. So a sensible person would be looking for a job right now. And I've been considering that, to be honest, even when I went to Vietnam last time. The number back when I went to Vietnam was already 0. It was time to go back to work. I just sort of delayed. And when I went to Vietnam, I was thinking, while I'm there, I'm going to look into getting a job teaching English. And then I would continue being a YouTuber, but I would have to work at the same time. So I would be making YouTube videos, but I would be making all of my videos from within Vietnam while I'm working, hopefully getting lots of time off and going on weekend journeys into the mountains and then to neighboring countries. So I didn't think my YouTube life would change very much, but I would have to go to work to make money. But when I got to Vietnam, I just wasn't in the mood, and I made a couple of tentative steps. I chatted with a couple of people about jobs teaching English, and people even sent me links to websites where companies were looking for English teachers, and I couldn't bear the thought. I really couldn't. I was never a very good English teacher. I'm very passionate about it. I work incredibly hard, but I wasn't very good at it, I don't think, at relating to my students and giving them what they needed in that environment. And it was very, very stressful. And you work so hard and you make so little money. It just wore me down to nothing, which is one of the reasons I moved into editing and writing and studio work, because I could do that. I enjoyed it a lot more, and I could do it well. And it was just a much better lifestyle for me. But there's a bit of and I was thinking that was all back in Taiwan, and way at the back of my mind, I was thinking that, well, I love Taiwan. I like Taipei. I wouldn't mind. I could live in another city in Taiwan, because Taipei was a little bit gloomy, and I spent so much time there. I know the city and the region so well. It would be nice to go somewhere new. And I was thinking that, okay, if all else fails, I can always hop on a flight back to Taiwan, go to this other city, maybe go to Taipei, connect with some people that I know there, maybe get freelance work, maybe get another office job as an editor, I don't know. But it was sort of a safety net I kept in the back of my mind. Like, when you're completely broke, you can always do that, and then maybe that will work out. But we are living in a new world, and I've been thinking about this a lot lately. All the work I used to do and got paid to do, I think AI can do it now, and can do it better than I could ever do it. And these companies don't need me anymore. I don't think they need English editors. They don't need English writers. They don't need voice recorders, because, you can just get Chat GPT. You can get DeepSeek. It can do all of this for you. There's so many ways to get this work done without hiring a human being. So it could be I'm now redundant. The work I used to do may be completely redundant. So maybe I waited too long this time. We will find out. But So yeah, the answer is pretty much zero. I may have to find a source of income very quickly, but for now, I mean, I'm continuing my YouTube life, and I am going to go back to Sumatra in like a week, and I'm planning to ride my bike around Sumatra for like a month or two, kind of scrape together the money to do that by hook or by crook, and then coming back to Malaysia, and then I'm hoping maybe to ride my bike around Malaysia. If the cycling in Sumatra works out, then ride my bike around Malaysia, and that could be the last hurrah for me, and then you may find me desperately looking for work by that point. And of course, I would love to go back to Canada, so I'm even considering, if I absolutely have to get a job in an office and become an office drone to survive, I wouldn't mind, this is like fantasy in the back of my mind, I wouldn't mind going back to Canada just for a visit. I'm way overdue for a visit. I haven't been in Canada for like 15 years, 16, 15 years. It would be nice to touch base there. I could put the flight on a credit card, worry about that for the future, paying for that in the future, and then touch base with family, with friends, with things that I have in storage, like my old journals, stuff like that, old photographs, just sort of hang out with my old journals and photographs for a little bit, touch base with being Canadian for a few weeks or a month, and then hop on another flight to another country to get a job as an English teacher. You know, it'd be nice to go to a new country, like brand new place. Love to go to Africa, get a job as an English teacher in Africa. That would be a huge adventure. But yeah, basically that's the long answer to your question. How many more years? Basically zero. It's time right now, more or less. And I'm pushing the envelope here in terms of finding a stable income. So yeah, we're gonna have to work on that pretty soon. So that is it for Planet Doug Patreon AMA video for the month of February 2025. I think I failed. I started off by saying I was going to keep this really short and sweet, but I started off with the questions from Umma Gumma, and I found them really interesting questions, and I wanted to talk about them for a while. So I just let myself talk, and who cares how long it goes on. I'll put chapter titles in the video, and people can just jump ahead to the next question if I've been talking for too long. That is the Planet Doug philosophy when it comes to these videos. So that's it. Shutting down for now. Thanks for hanging out with me. Thank you to everyone who asked a question. I appreciate it very much. And of course, now we're going to be starting with the AMA listing for March. At the top of the Planet Doug Patreon, there's always going to be a pinned post, the AMA post, and you can always leave a question there at any time for the AMA video for March, a month from now. Maybe a month from now, I will be working as an English teacher by then. Who knows? And no, I won't be. I'll be in Sumatra, maybe riding my bicycle. We'll see how that goes out. But yeah, anyway, AMA video posting on Planet Doug Patreon. You can leave your questions on the pinned post, and then I'll remind people from time to time as the month comes to an end. And then you can just leave your question anywhere. I'll find it. So thank you very much. I'll see everybody in the next video.